Assalamu alaikum, everybody. My name is Justin Mashouf. I was a juror for the awards for the Center for Global Muslim Life. We are very excited to be speaking to Amin of Ajam band today, who is on our list for top global Muslim artists. Amin, how are you? Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum. Wa alaikum salam. Very, very privileged to be in this list, and yeah, thank you very much. I'm glad to be at your service. How's it going?
Things are great, man. Considering everything, and we're really very excited to be presenting these awards this year. And I wanted to give a little context for the viewers. I met Amin. Oh man, I don't know what year it was that I reached out to you, but I had just being an Iranian American, and the finding Ajam band's music, um, finding out that Amin was actually raised in the UK, and blended these different styles of Western and Eastern musics, was really just mind blowing to me. And what especially got my attention was their influence of the Varzesh Bastani, which is like a national martial art of Iran, that I studied. I had the opportunity to study when I was in Iran. So I became heavily obsessed with that tradition, and his music kind of draws a lot from that tradition. So it was really the first modern music act that I had found that leveraged the kind of the history and the power of the Zurkhune of Varzesh Bastani. And from that point on, I had been a huge fan. My kids are huge fans. Some kids listen to the Frozen soundtrack over and over again. And my kids listen to Ajam band. they come yelling at me, demanding that I put on Sanambia or other songs, Bandara London.
Wow, that's amazing.
My son, who's now 4, before he could even say words, was demanding that I'd play Ajam band's music by just using animal sounds based on the images, the cover art of the music. So it's definitely well deserved that you're on this list, man. You've made waves,
God
and
bless.
we want to ask you a couple of questions to kind of talk about the music and talk about your work, man. So how would you describe Ajam's music style?
Um, I mean, the simplest thing we've tried to use is usually just roots music. You know, contemporary roots music. So it's not traditional per se, because traditional music for me is something that would be essentially based on either recycling of old tunes or making like or reciting something that's already existing, whereas this is a contemporary music, is something that we make for our current context but using roots elements. So contemporary Iranian roots music is the long-winded name we use for it.
And Ajam leverages so many different styles of regional flavors from Iran, which may not be seen as, modern, if you will, from the different, mahals, the traditional kind of outskirts of cities, using even regional dialects that people don't really even can really understand themselves if they when they live in Iran. Do you see this as kind of like a, a decolonizing of music?
Yeah, it's a good way of putting it, actually. The way I mean, there's so many different angles of approach, because for me, this is my life. Like, I mean, if I was gonna try to summarize it, it would almost do it injustice in a sense. But for me, I always had this kind of weird concept that I thought, if anyone from any part of the world, wherever they're born, regardless of where it is, sort of goes back and sort of almost pays their tribute or their respect after gaining whatever skills sets that they gain throughout their early life, if they kind of can go back to their roots. It's almost there's a greater opportunity for creating a balance. Like even if you just look at it on a village to city level. So if you've got villagers going to cities for more opportunities for work, it almost then if they can bring back what they have to wherever they've come from, there's more chance of creating the variety that's required to almost allow that village or that locality to start flourishing and creating more opportunities, native opportunities. So that's what we try to do in the music in a sense as well. So if you've got, for example, if you look at Iran as just one country, it'll be you've got the art music, which is the institutionalized music, and then all the regional musics will always see themselves as subservient to that art culture. But if you go, one of my main aims was to actually almost give them a platform to, especially for the young kids, because obviously the older generations have an intrinsic connection with it, but the youth, almost giving them a platform or a voice to almost own their own culture again, and not always feel like that they're in the shadow of the institutionalized music. And then if you look at that on an international level, it's the same thing. It's like each country may, in a sense, always see themselves subservient to the commercial powers of music, or even to classical institutionalized music, whereas it's almost just a, a brain wave just out there to say, guys, you don't need to always have this apologetic tone about your music, and say, oh, we're always trying to melt it with or blend it with like today's music in a way that other people will appreciate it in a way. It's almost being a bit more bold and saying, this is our music, like own it, just own it. That was the main aim. So
And in modern
decolonize
terms, and in modern
it.
terms, man, it slaps. And because, if you listen to it, you could play Ajam band's music to, a non-Iranian, person, or just even a modern person in anywhere in the world, and the rhythm and the universality of the sounds, it's just live. It makes you want to move, and it's inspirational. And I wanted to ask you, do you feel that, and how have you made attempts to make community through your music? How have you, made attempts to make global community with your music?
I mean, we had some really interesting opportunities circa 2012, 2013, which was actually, I think, when you were mentioning our first contact, might date back to that year, because then when we came to the States in 2014, I think that was uh, the first privilege we had to actually see you in person and say hi. And so I think 2012 we got to perform in the I think it was called the Spring Festival in Egypt and Lebanon, and it was a really volatile time, as you may also remember at that time, especially in the Arab world. And we we were frequently faced with the language barrier, obviously. So coming from the Persianate or the Iranian centric world, there was a lot of reacquainting ourselves with uh, the vernacular in a way that is native to us. A lot of the archaic Arabic, a lot of the Persian that might be in the modern Lebanese and Egyptian vernacular as well, that we were trying to kind of rely upon to kind of just almost break down the racial kind of what's the word, the racial rhetoric that there is around the modern nation state mentalities, and almost just get to the core of the fact that we have so much shared heritage, especially in the spiritual heritage. We got like an amazing tour of Cairo, which I think if any Iranian could go and see that, it would literally change their perception, especially more religious Iranians. They would not be aware of the similarities there. So I think that community feel, I got that again in 2013 when we went to Turkey. We played at Ankara University, and exactly those Zurkhune references that you mentioned in your very kind introduction of me. When we were shouting just those zikrs, zikr that we were saying, like, Ya Shah Mardan, Ya Shir Yazdan, all these things that we believe to be very Persianate in essence. You could see the response. You'd see the hel hele, like the sending us labbaik, like kind of almost saying like, we feel you, we see the heritage that you're coming from. And seriously, those nights that we performed, and the having those sort of the Egyptian kids, the Turkish kids, the Lebanese kids kind of come to us, and they kind of tell us, we see what you're doing. We don't understand maybe word for word what you're saying, but we see what you're doing. That is probably the most rewarding thing I've done in my life. Like, and I hope we can continue that in any way possible.
Wow. And it's funny you bring up language because I wanted to ask you, um, to break down a little bit about what does Ajam even mean? What does your name mean?
It's always had a bit of controversy, especially with the more nation state mentality people. I don't want to call them racists, but the people who have a very racially orientated view of the world. Ajam, one of the meanings, I could go on for the whole night as to how many different meanings it has, but Ajam in one facet means someone who is ineloquent, or possibly not. One extreme definition of it that you get in some periods is mute, even like someone who just can't speak. But then that's coming to the spiritual poetry in a sense, especially of Jalaluddin Rumi, or Attar Neishaburi, which is actually we use one of his quatrains in one of our um, almost defining songs that we've made, Bahra Tavila Ajami. The phrase, the word Ajam, sort of starts to take different connotations. So in the spiritual sense, someone who is Ajami is someone who holds their tongue. So you may be you may be aware of a deeper meaning, a deeper understanding, but for the context that you're in, you choose to hold your tongue because maybe your audience is not possibly ready to uh, accept what you're trying to say, or they may misconstrue what you're trying to say, and you may even damage the secret that you are holding, or the greater knowledge that you're holding, by bringing it to your tongue in your inelegant human way. You're almost doing it a disservice. You're potentially harming it. So you choose to hold your tongue. You make yourself Ajami. It's
And
one of the
that's a great kind of transition to my next question is, what is the role of spirituality in your creation process and in your music?
uh, for me, the whole thing is spiritual. Like there's there's very, very few material gains I can see in what I'm trying to get over. Like this, it's materialist. It's harmed me a lot in life. My main line of business is actually transport planning, highways engineering is completely different. So music has always been a purely spiritual endeavor for me. And I guess, especially growing up in London, music, and especially the music cultures that were around, urban music in particular, really shaped the worldview of the kids. You know, like you had kids like judging each other based on things that they've learned from songs, from music videos, from all sorts of facets of that commercialized music industry that just got worse and worse in terms of the commercial grip of it throughout our youth. So the I always saw the music as a mechanism of almost connecting to um, a rich heritage that many people have, not Iranians in particular. I'm talking about if you're from anywhere in the world, even you know, the British kids, the pure English kids that were brought up here, if they went and researched their own roots, a lot of it has deep seated, like deep inherent spirituality in it, because it's a product of many years of people's thinking that, and the reason it's sort of stayed alive in their heritage is to do with that spirituality. Without spirituality, culture almost won't thrive beyond certain generations. You know, you might have um, little peaks of certain cultures that may seem, at least on the surface, to be non-spiritual, but they will die down very quickly. And what does remain is that inherent feeling that people get. Like if you hear like the azan, or if you hear the like the recitation of a poem, and it deeply affects you, that's the spirituality that will live on. That's probably, when you're dying, that's the one that you'll recite. That's the one that you'll pass on at your most beautiful moment to your kids. So in the thought process, that's what comes up. Like, where if you listen to that song Sanambia, it's exactly that. You have this one idol in your mind that you're thinking, like, you know, I am. It doesn't necessarily have to be, it's a visage of the one unity of God, that you kind of you kind of you see it in something. And whether it be the love of a mother, whether it be your kids, you know, something of the creation that reminds you of the creator. And then to bring it down into into an almost very simple uh, contemporary phrasing is basically what I'm trying to do. So I maybe moved by like seeing an amazing like landscape, and then you want to bring it into something that's almost something that you can bop your head to, and you listen to it in your car, and it still translates over. So it's really difficult to cross that, to make that link. But that's what's fun about it. That's what makes me uh, damage myself commercially, sit at home, and not take a lot of commercial profit opportunities for this one image that I got in my head. Sorry to answer so
No,
long-winded.
man,
You
it's
ask
beautiful.
very open-ended questions.
These are all the questions I've always wanted to ask you, and now I just have the
I
opportunity
get
to.
that.
The I wanted to ask you to break down, since most of our viewers are probably not Persian speakers, break down some of your lyrics.
Mhm. Oh, there's a backup and sync from Google. Sorry, my bad. I guess that the one that I referred to, the Bahr Tawil Ajami, which Bahr Tawil is a form of uh, Iranian poetry, I guess. They have it in Arabic poetry as well. It's an archaic form of poetry that's been then um, revived through different forms of passion plays and things like that. And I've always used it as uh, a native option for rap, basically. Like if you know, if I try to do anything in a rap sort of context, I always find it to be a bit of an imitation. It doesn't feel very, it
It
doesn't
doesn't
feel
feel
very close
native.
to the heart.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's an imitation in there. It doesn't feel like it's intrinsically from my um, heritage, as it were. Not to be go down that whole heritage route. That's we try to think more inclusively than that. But I mean, Bahr Tawil is just a form of poetry that uses the constant the what's the word? I've been thinking in Iranian too much recently. Just the actual natural weighting of the words to make the rhythm rather than um, you know, bringing it into singing form, and you can stretch some words or you can sort of shorten some sounds. No, you try to use the actual natural weight of the words, the syllables, to actually sort of create that syncopation. So there's one little element of this song that we have, Bahra Tabila Ajami, which it's almost a caricature of that internal awakening that brought me onto this path. So it's that moment of questioning, and it's that moment of almost doubt. You're thinking like, what's the purpose? What am I doing? What's my day-to-day life even got to do with where I want to end up? And then it's almost within that cacophony in your mind, you you start to actually see a bit of clarity. So in the pre-chorus it says یک شب سر خواب حال احوال خراب خسته از خصم زمونه تشنه مایه ناب. It's like, well, one night before sleep, tossing and turning restlessly, and I'm exhausted from the what's the word? I've tried to actually write it down a little bit in English. I'm exhausted from the day-to-day grind, the everyday grind, and I'm thirsty for the rarest of substances. That feeling is not a substance. In Persian we say, like, maya, for example, it could be construed as substance, but it's just that feeling that I'm thirsty for, and I start drowning. It's almost saying that غرق افکار و خیالم شدم فارغ از عالم شدم. I start to sort of drown into my thoughts, and it starts to blend into dreams, and I drift away from this world until suddenly a voice whispers into the ear of my heart. So, تا که صدایی دم گوش دل من گفت خود را عجمی ساز بر این خلق دغلباز بشنو سخن دل بشو حافظ این راز. So it's like that little voice into the whispers into the ear of my heart that make yourself ajami, like make yourself the phrase ajami that I tried to explain,
right.
become the ajami in the face of all these deceitful masses, these insincere masses. Listen to the word of the heart and be the keeper of that secret. Hold on to that secret. So it's almost that it's overwhelming to even try to put it into words, but that
It's amazing.
connection that you feel, that suddenly that goes beyond the realm of doubt and brings you into another form of understanding, which is, I think, the actual aim of Deen, as the aim of Tariqat, Shariat, everything almost comes to this focal point.
Word, man, that's beautiful. We wanted to give everybody a little taste of Bahra Tawil before we wrap up. So we'll give it to you.
سلام و عرض ادب پیر و جوان خرد و کبیر قدم تک تکتون صاف رو دو چشمون حقیر بنده یه معرکه گیر کمی گستاخ و دلیر به همین صحنه وزیرم و سفیر ز دیار عجمستان رخصت از حضرت پیر شیر یزدان شاه و سلطان و امیر بنده بی نصیبم از سواد مکتب ولی هر شب بر اسباب طرب میکنم اظهار ادب یک شب سر خواب حال احوال خراب خسته از خصم زمون تشنه مایه ناب غرق افکار و خیالم شدم فارغ از عالم شدم تا که صدایی دم گوش دل من گفت
خود را هجمی ساز بر این خلق دغل باز بشنو سخن دل بشو حافظ این راز
قطره نیشم چکه از مایه آن بحر طویل ضرب اوزان اصیل لحن الفاظ جمیل دم رودخانه تمز به جوار رود نیل میل و کباده و سنگ فیل و قلعه سر جنگ اسب و سرباز زرنگ بشنوید بحر طویل قیل و قال و قال و قیل شکل و اشکال شکیل فکر و افکار ثقیل بشنوید بحر طویل درک و ادراک دلیل عقل و دل هر دو دخیل بشنوید بحر طویل بشنوید بحر طویل یک شب سر خواب حال احوال خراب خسته از خصم زمون تشنه مایه ناب غرق افکار و خیالم شدم فارغ از عالم شدم تا که صدایی دم گوش دل من گفت
خود را هجمی ساز بر این خلق دغل باز بشنو سخن دل بشو حافظ این راز
مگو دگر رندی و عاشقی اگر شهره ناکسان مشو تاج عجم منه به سر تاج عجم منه به سر من شنیده ای بال برآور ای پسر من عجمم عجم منم من عجمم عجم منم من عجمم عجم منم من عجمم بگذشت فرق دو جهان گوهر ما و از گوهر ماست این عظمت در سر ما ما عجمیان بارگاه عشقیم این سر تو ندانی به چایی بر ما
Man, such a great video, man. Definitely one of my favorites of your battles, man. Mashallah, it's so well shot and edited. The words and the inside of each other is just like bananas, man. It's like a whole university course of Farsi language in it as well.
Yes, I mean, because you're being so kind, it almost begs me to explain that I didn't speak, like, I couldn't read and write Farsi until the age of almost 17, 18.
Wow.
So a lot of the the literary skills that I've developed since then are, it's almost a testament of what I'm talking about in terms of the internal enlightenment, to kind of say, if you do give yourself to that the beloved or the higher feeling, that there's so much potential that is outside of your realms of expectation, that suddenly becomes you suddenly have access to. So yeah, sorry to over explain things, but
No, man. That's beautiful. That's amazing and very inspiring. And you know, I wanted to ask you, what does 2021 look like for Ajam?
To be honest, thankfully, the 2020 showed us a lot of lessons, and one of the uh, obviously recurring themes for anyone in the Muslim type of mind frame would be that it is always important to be, uh, in taslim. You should be in submission, because we had many plans for 2020, and it took a completely different path, and nothing that I would complain about personally on an in personal level. So I think 2021 will be much the same. Instead, we have our plans. My plan is to go and get into the core of the native urban roots music. So we did a lot of experimenting with rural music. Maybe not in the songs that you just listened to now, but even that for me was a bit of imitation works. But when we get to things like that Bahra Tabi that you just heard now, or the plethora of songs that I'm putting together, just sitting around in my laptop at the moment, they get down to the roadman music, as it were, the street music of the big conurbations in Iran, even Turkish influences, Iraqi influences. So it's all that common taste, or those sensibilities that we have in a lot of the urban centers of the wider Middle East, especially Central Asia, Caucasus. So we're bringing a lot of that into the new songs that we're doing. But what comes above all of that is taslim. Like, if there's a COVID-21, then we will find another way to do it.
Inshallah, man. That's amazing. How do people contact you? How do they reach out to you and hear more of your music?
Our YouTube channel's relatively well kept, but so that's youtube.com/Ajam channel. Ajam band is usually our little. I don't like the sticker band, but we're stuck with it now. So Ajam band is us on Instagram and Facebook, and I guess those ones, because the notifications come up on my phone. Those are the ones that I would really ask people to send us criticism, send us advice, send us anything that will help us grow and learn more, hopefully.
Beautiful, man. Well, thank you. And on behalf of the Center for Global Muslim Life and our sponsors, our amazing sponsors, Launch Good, Gold Studios, and Bayan Islamic Graduate School, we thank you. And inshallah, we'll see you in 2021. And we really look forward to all of the projects that you talked about.
Inshallah. God bless your family and all your colleagues and everyone around there, and thank you once again for seeing us worthy to be at your service.
Absolutely, man. Assalamu alaikum.
Khuda Hafiz.